Infor Time Track user creation. From the admin homepage, select the Users icon. This opens the Users form in Filter in Place. Select the filter in place to put the form into standard mode. Select Insert New Record from the icon ribbon to begin creating a new user profile. Enter a username in the username field. Set superuser to no. Enter first and last name in the user description field. For console profiles, enter the device name or ID in this field. Enter the user's network domain and username to log into the application with the user's network credentials, or leave this field blank to set up a Factory Track specific password. Enter and confirm a password if setting up a Factory Track specific password. For editing permissions, it is recommended to use basic for non-technical administrators and supervisors, and recommended to use none for employee and console profiles. Permission groups give the users access to the application forms. To assign a permission group to a user, select a group from the pull-down list in the group name field. The highest level permission is the Infor System Administrator group. This group contains permissions to all objects in the Factory Track application. Only assign this group to administrator profiles. There also exists an FT Administrator group which contains only the Factory Track administrator forms. This should be assigned to administrators in preference if the administrator is not to be provided access to other Infor applications. For all non-administrator users, FT base should always be assigned. This group contains all secondary objects required to perform the functions triggered by primary form. We then need to add the group that corresponds to the purpose for this user. If they are a supervisor, then they should be assigned FT supervisor. If they're employees, they should be assigned FT employee. If they are consoles, they should be assigned FT console. The FT supervisor includes all the objects in FT employee and FT console, so it is not necessary to add these groups to a supervisor user profile. It's not recommended to give employee users access to console user objects, nor is it recommended to give console users access to employee user objects. Therefore, the objects in FT employee and FT console are independent of one another. After assigning the FT base permission group, employee users should only have permission to FT employee and console users should only have permission to FT console. Once permission groups are assigned, select Save. The user profile is now contained, but user modules, Factory Track information, and Time Track params still need to be set. To assign licenses to the user profile, select the User Modules form in the center of the Users form. The Users Module form will open in a linked format with the Users form. All on-premise installations will require users to have the Factory Track base module. Full named user access will require Factory Track TT Trans. Administrators and supervisors will need this module. There is a limited access module used by elapsed time employees called Factory Track Time Entry. This module only allows access to the elapsed detail form for time entry. It should be given to employee users that only need access to the elapsed detail form. If the user will need access to forms in the shop floor or warehouse mobility module, those license modules will need to be added to the profile as well. If the installation is a cloud installation, Factory Track Cloud is the only license module that needs to be selected. Just one final note on access error message. If a user attempts to access a form and receives a hard stop advising there is a problem, you need to pay particular attention to the working of the error message. If the message says the user does not have permission for the form, this indicates they've tried to open a form that is not included in their permission groups. If the message refers to the user not being licensed to this form, this indicates they've tried to open a form that is not included in the license modules assigned to their user. Next, we need to look at the Factory Track Information tab on the Users form. The primary Time Track purpose for this tab is to define the user's Time Track role. The three roles are Administrator, Supervisor, and User. The User Type field needs to be set to the appropriate Time Track role. The Administrator role allows the user to edit and delete records on the configuration forms. The supervisor role allows the user to view records on the configuration forms and allows the user to be configured to edit time and date on the transaction forms. The user role is used by employee and console profiles and restricts the user to transaction forms. When the user type is set to administrator or supervisor, set the user can change clock field to yes to allow the user to edit date and time on transaction forms. When it's set to no, the user may only enter transactions in real-time mode. Each user is required to specify user initials in the sightline or CSI world. Do so by entering the user's initials in the user initial field. The Time Track Parameters tab sets time track specific user parameters. Report date filter defaults to pay period. This parameter is used on the employee and supervisor landing pages. Users are allowed to view time in pay period, work week, or daily views. This parameter sets the default view. The Display Hours in Decimals checkbox specifies whether hours in the new user experience will display in hours and minutes or hours and fractions of hours. The default selection is unchecked hours and minutes. Time zone sets how forms that display the current time will be presented. If the application server is in the same time zone as the user, then nothing needs to be entered here. If the application server is in a different time zone, enter the user's local time zone here. Forms that display the current time will display the user's local time. If the field is left blank, these forms will display the application server's local time.